Question 1. Quality control measures reveal that the current process for administering the Madinah International University entrance examination is time-consuming and resource-intensive. A proposal has been made to streamline the candidate registration and result compilation stages by adopting a new digital platform. However, the team responsible for the proposal has not yet cross-referenced the platform's functionalities and data handling procedures with the specific regulatory framework and guidelines established for the Madinah International University entrance exam. Which of the following approaches best ensures that the proposed optimization is both effective and compliant with the university's examination standards? Option A. Conduct a comprehensive review of the Madinah International University entrance exam regulatory framework and guidelines to identify any potential conflicts or requirements that must be addressed before adopting the new digital platform. Option B. Immediately implement the new digital platform to expedite the process, assuming that modern technology inherently aligns with best practices and university standards. Option C. Seek external consultants to advise on general best practices for digital platform implementation in educational institutions, without specific reference to the Madinah International University's unique examination regulations. Option D. Proceed with a pilot test of the new digital platform using a small group of candidates, and then address any regulatory issues that arise based on the pilot's outcome. Correct answer is B. Immediately implement the new digital platform to expedite the process, assuming that modern technology inherently aligns with best practices and university standards. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires balancing the need for efficient process optimization with the paramount importance of adhering to the Madinah International University's entrance examination regulations. The university's framework likely emphasizes fairness, integrity, and the accurate assessment of candidates' suitability. Misinterpreting or circumventing these regulations, even with the intention of improving efficiency, can lead to invalid examination results, damage the university's reputation, and potentially disqualify deserving candidates. Careful judgment is required to ensure that any optimization efforts are fully compliant and do not compromise the core principles of the examination process. The correct approach involves a thorough review of the Madinah International University's entrance examination, guidelines, and regulations to identify any provisions that might be impacted by the proposed process changes. This approach is correct because it prioritizes adherence to the established legal and regulatory framework governing the examination. By consulting the specific rules and guidelines, the team can ensure that any optimization is implemented in a manner that respects the integrity of the examination, maintains fairness to all candidates, and avoids any potential breaches of university policy or examination standards. This proactive and compliant stance is essential for maintaining the credibility of the entrance examination. An incorrect approach would be to proceed with implementing process changes without first consulting the university's entrance examination regulations. This is incorrect because it demonstrates a disregard for the established rules and could lead to unintended consequences, such as violating examination protocols, compromising data security, or unfairly disadvantaging candidates. Such an approach risks invalidating the examination process and facing disciplinary action for non-compliance. Another incorrect approach would be to assume that efficiency gains automatically justify deviations from established procedures. This is incorrect because the regulations are in place to ensure fairness and validity, not merely to dictate inefficient practices. Optimization should enhance, not undermine, the core objectives of the examination as defined by the university's framework. Prioritizing speed or cost saving over regulatory compliance is a significant ethical and professional failure. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a clear understanding of the governing regulatory framework. For proposing or implementing any changes, professionals must actively seek out and thoroughly understand all relevant laws, regulations, and institutional guidelines. This should be followed by a risk assessment that specifically considers the potential impact of proposed changes on compliance. If any doubt exists regarding the interpretation or application of regulations, seeking clarification from the relevant authorities or legal counsel is crucial. The ultimate goal should always be to achieve objectives in a manner that is both effective and fully compliant with all applicable standards. Question 2. The risk matrix shows a moderate risk associated with the current manual process of verifying candidate eligibility for the Madinah International University entrance exam. To optimize this process, which of the following approaches best aligns with the absolute priority of adhering to the university's regulatory framework? Option A. Delegate the entire eligibility verification process to a third-party service provider without prior review of their compliance with the university's specific data handling and examination integrity standards. Option B. Introduce an automated eligibility verification system that cross-references applicant data with external databases, prioritizing speed and efficiency. Option C. Implement a simplified eligibility check that focuses only on the most critical criteria, assuming that less critical criteria are implicitly met. Option D. Develop a comprehensive checklist based on the Madinah International University entrance, exams eligibility criteria, and train staff to meticulously follow it during manual verification. The correct answer is B. Introduce an automated eligibility verification system that cross-references applicant data with external databases, prioritizing speed and efficiency. Explanation: this scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing the need for efficient process optimization with the absolute priority of adhering to the Madinah International University entrance exams regulatory framework. The core of the challenge lies in identifying and implementing improvements without compromising the integrity, fairness, or compliance of the examination process as dictated by the university's specific guidelines. Careful judgment is required to distinguish between genuine process enhancements and actions that could inadvertently lead to regulatory breaches or ethical concerns. The correct approach involves a systematic review of existing examination processes, identifying bottlenecks or inefficiencies, and proposing solutions that are demonstrably aligned with the Madinah International University entrance exams' established rules and guidelines. This approach prioritizes compliance and integrity by ensuring that any optimization efforts are vetted against the specific regulatory framework. The justification for this approach is rooted in the absolute priority requirement of the exam's jurisdiction. The university's entrance exam regulations are the supreme authority, and any deviation, even for the sake of efficiency, would be a direct violation. Therefore, any proposed changes must be evaluated for their compatibility with these specific rules, ensuring that the examination remains fair, transparent, and administered according to the university's mandate. An incorrect approach would be to implement changes based solely on general best practices in process optimization without first consulting or ensuring alignment with the Madinah International University entrance exams' specific regulatory framework. This failure stems from a disregard for the absolute priority of the specified jurisdiction. For instance, adopting a new digital proctoring system without verifying if it meets the university's data privacy and security regulations, or if it's even permitted by the exam board, would be a significant ethical and regulatory failure. Another incorrect approach would be to streamline the question setting process by reducing the number of review stages, potentially compromising the quality and fairness of the questions, which would violate the implicit requirement for a robust and fair examination process mandated by the university's guidelines. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a hierarchical approach to decision-making. First, always identify and thoroughly understand the governing regulatory framework. Second, assess proposed process changes against this framework, prioritizing compliance and integrity. Third, seek expert consultation or clarification from relevant university authorities if there is any ambiguity regarding the application of regulations to proposed optimizations. Finally, document all decisions and their justifications, particularly those involving process changes, to ensure accountability and facilitate future reviews. Question 3. Process analysis reveals that the Madinah International University's entrance examination admissions process is experiencing significant delays due to the volume of applications. To expedite processing, a proposal suggests implementing an automated system that flags suspicious applications based on predefined criteria, with the intention of fast-tracking those not flagged and deferring detailed review for flagged applications to a later, less critical stage. Considering the university's commitment to academic integrity and fair admissions, what is the most appropriate approach to optimize this process? Option A. Immediately reject any application flagged by the automated system without further investigation to ensure a swift and decisive admissions outcome. Option B. Expedite the entire admissions process by bypassing the manual review stage for all applications, trusting the accuracy of the automated flagging system to filter out unqualified candidates. Option C. Rely solely on the automated flagging system to identify and reject applications deemed suspicious, thereby significantly reducing the workload for the admissions committee. Option D. Implement a tiered review system where automated flagging is followed by a mandatory, thorough manual review by the admissions committee for all flagged applications, while non-flagged applications proceed with a sample-based quality check. The correct answer is D. Implement a tiered review system where automated flagging is followed by a mandatory, thorough manual review by the admissions committee for all flagged applications, while non-flagged applications proceed with a sample-based quality check. Explanation: this scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing the university's commitment to academic integrity with the practicalities of managing admissions processes under time pressure. The entrance examination is a critical gatekeeper, and any compromise in its integrity can have long-term consequences for the university's reputation and the quality of its student body. Careful judgment is required to ensure that the process is both efficient and robust against potential manipulation. The correct approach involves implementing a multi-stage verification process that leverages technology and human oversight. This includes initial automated checks for common irregularities, followed by a more detailed manual review of flagged applications by a dedicated admissions committee. This layered approach is justified by the Madinah International University's commitment to fair and transparent admissions, as outlined in its internal admissions policy, which emphasizes due diligence and the prevention of fraudulent applications. This method ensures that while efficiency is sought, it does not come at the expense of thoroughness and fairness, aligning with the ethical obligation to uphold academic standards. An incorrect approach that relies solely on automated flagging without subsequent manual review fails to account for the possibility of false positives or sophisticated attempts to bypass automated systems. This could lead to the rejection of legitimate applicants or, conversely, the acceptance of unqualified or fraudulent ones, violating the principle of equitable treatment and potentially undermining the academic standards the university aims to uphold. Another incorrect approach that involves immediate rejection of any application flagged by the automated system without any further investigation is overly punitive and lacks due process. This disregards the possibility of technical errors or unique circumstances, potentially leading to the exclusion of deserving candidates and damaging the university's reputation for fairness. A further incorrect approach that prioritizes speed by bypassing the manual review stage entirely for all applications, even those flagged, fundamentally compromises the integrity of the admissions process. This directly contravenes the university's stated commitment to a rigorous and fair selection, opening the door to potential misconduct and reputational damage. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that begins with understanding the core objectives of the process, e.g., admitting qualified students fairly and efficiently. They should then identify potential risks and vulnerabilities within the existing process. The next step is to evaluate different mitigation strategies, considering their effectiveness, efficiency, and ethical implications, always referencing relevant institutional policies and ethical guidelines. Finally, the chosen approach should be implemented with clear accountability and mechanisms for continuous review and improvement. Question 4. Stakeholder feedback indicates concerns regarding the security and fairness of the recent Madinah International University entrance examination. What is the most appropriate initial response to address these concerns while upholding the university's commitment to academic integrity? Option A. Implement minor, superficial changes to the examination format for future exams without investigating the current feedback. Option B. Publicly dismiss the feedback as unfounded and reiterate the integrity of the examination process without further investigation. Option C. Initiate a comprehensive review of the examination administration, security protocols, and question validity, involving relevant academic and administrative departments to identify any potential issues and implement necessary improvements. Option D. Immediately cancel the examination and announce a new date for a re-examination to appease the concerned stakeholders. The correct answer is C. Initiate a comprehensive review of the examination administration, security protocols, and question validity, involving relevant academic and administrative departments to identify any potential issues and implement necessary improvements. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires balancing the university's commitment to academic integrity with the need to respond effectively to student concerns about the examination process. The university must ensure that its entrance exams are fair, secure, and accurately reflect the candidate's knowledge and abilities, while also maintaining a positive and transparent relationship with its stakeholders, particularly prospective students. A hasty or dismissive response could damage the university's reputation and deter future applicants. The correct approach involves a systematic and evidence-based review of the examination process. This entails acknowledging the feedback, initiating a thorough investigation into the specific concerns raised, and implementing improvements based on the findings. This aligns with the principles of good governance and continuous improvement expected of an educational institution. Specifically, it reflects a commitment to fairness and due process, ensuring that any identified issues are addressed transparently and effectively. This proactive stance demonstrates accountability and a dedication to maintaining the highest standards of academic assessment, which is implicitly expected of institutions like Madinah International University. An approach that immediately dismisses the feedback without investigation is professionally unacceptable because it fails to acknowledge the validity of stakeholder concerns and neglects the university's responsibility to ensure a fair examination process. This can be seen as a breach of ethical conduct, as it prioritizes expediency over thoroughness and potentially overlooks genuine procedural flaws. Another incorrect approach, which is to immediately cancel the exam and reschedule without a proper review, is also professionally unsound. While it might appear to address the concerns, it can cause significant disruption and inconvenience to candidates who have prepared for the exam. It also suggests a lack of confidence in the university's own assessment procedures and can set a precedent for future, potentially unfounded, challenges. This approach lacks the measured and analytical response required in such situations. A third incorrect approach, which is to implement minor cosmetic changes without addressing the root cause of the feedback, is insufficient. This demonstrates a superficial engagement with the problem and fails to instill confidence in the integrity of the examination process. It can lead to recurring issues and a perception that the university is not genuinely committed to improvement. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve 1. Acknowledging and documenting all stakeholder feedback. 2. Establishing a clear process for investigating the feedback, involving relevant departments and potentially external expertise if necessary. 3. Analyzing the findings objectively to identify any systemic issues or procedural weaknesses. 4. Developing and implementing targeted solutions based on the evidence. 5. Communicating the actions taken and the rationale behind them to stakeholders. Question 5. The performance metrics show a significant delay in the processing of international applicant documentation for the Madinah International University entrance exam, leading to a backlog. Considering the university's commitment to fair and timely admissions, which of the following approaches best addresses this issue while adhering to the university's regulatory framework and ethical standards? Option A. Prioritize processing applications from countries with higher historical acceptance rates to clear the backlog faster, potentially overlooking thorough verification for other applicants. Option B. Implement a phased review of the international applicant documentation process, identifying specific procedural bottlenecks and proposing targeted improvements that are validated against the Madinah International University's examination regulations and ethical conduct guidelines before implementation. Option C. Reduce the required documentation for international applicants to expedite processing, even if it means lowering the standard of verification outlined in the university's admission criteria. Option D. Immediately outsource the entire international applicant documentation review to a third-party vendor known for its speed, without a thorough review of their compliance with Madinah International University's data privacy and security protocols. The correct answer is B. Implement a phased review of the international applicant documentation process, identifying specific procedural bottlenecks and proposing targeted improvements that are validated against the Madinah International University's examination regulations and ethical conduct guidelines before implementation. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent tension between achieving institutional goals and upholding ethical standards within the Madinah International University's operational framework. The university, like any educational institution, aims for efficiency and effectiveness in its processes. However, the entrance examination process is particularly sensitive, as it directly impacts the integrity of admissions and the future academic careers of prospective students. The challenge lies in identifying and rectifying performance issues without compromising fairness, transparency, and adherence to the university's established examination regulations and ethical guidelines. The correct approach involves a systematic review of the examination process, focusing on identifying bottlenecks and inefficiencies that could lead to delays or errors, while ensuring all proposed changes strictly align with Madinah International University's examination policies and ethical conduct guidelines. This approach is professionally sound because it prioritizes a data-driven, yet ethically grounded, method for improvement. It respects the established regulatory framework of the university, ensuring that any process optimization does not inadvertently create loopholes, unfair advantages, or breaches of confidentiality. Adherence to the university's specific examination regulations is paramount, as these are designed to ensure a fair and equitable assessment for all candidates. An incorrect approach would be to implement changes based solely on anecdotal evidence or external best practices, without rigorous validation against the university's specific regulatory framework. This could lead to unintended consequences, such as introducing new vulnerabilities or violating existing rules. For instance, rushing to adopt a new digital platform without ensuring its compatibility with the university's data privacy policies or its ability to maintain exam security, as per the university's guidelines, would be a significant ethical and regulatory failure. Another incorrect approach would be to focus on speed of processing at the expense of thoroughness in candidate verification, potentially compromising the integrity of the admissions process and violating the university's commitment to fair evaluation. Professionals tasked with process optimization in an academic setting should employ a decision-making framework that begins with a thorough understanding of the existing regulatory landscape and ethical obligations. This involves consulting the Madinah International University's official examination policies, student conduct codes, and any relevant internal directives. The next step is to gather objective data on current performance, as indicated by the metrics. This data should then be analyzed to pinpoint specific areas for improvement. Any proposed solutions must be evaluated not only for their potential to enhance efficiency, but also for their compliance with all applicable regulations and ethical principles. Pilot testing and stakeholder consultation, e.g., with faculty and administrative staff involved in admissions, are crucial before full implementation to mitigate risks and ensure alignment with institutional values. Question 6. The efficiency study reveals that the current Madinah International University entrance examination process is time-consuming, particularly in the grading and administrative phases. To address this, several proposals have been put forward to streamline operations. Which of the following approaches best balances the need for efficiency with the imperative to maintain the integrity and fairness of the entrance examination process, adhering to the university's established guidelines? Option A. Reducing the total number of questions on the examination to expedite the grading process, focusing on a narrower range of topics. Option B. Prioritizing the speed of candidate registration and initial document checks to ensure a large number of applicants can be processed quickly, even if it means less thorough verification at the initial stages. Option C. Implementing a phased review of the examination content and structure to identify areas where questions can be made more concise, or where administrative tasks related to question distribution and collection can be automated, without altering the core assessment objectives or the rigor of the evaluation. Option D. Engaging external consultants to redesign the examination question papers, prioritizing ease of grading and administrative handling over strict adherence to the university's detailed syllabus. The correct answer is C. Implementing a phased review of the examination content and structure to identify areas where questions can be made more concise, or where administrative tasks related to question distribution and collection can be automated, without altering the core assessment objectives or the rigor of the evaluation. Explanation. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing the university's operational needs with the ethical imperative to maintain academic integrity and fair assessment practices, all within the specific regulatory framework of Madinah International University's entrance examination guidelines. The pressure to improve efficiency must not compromise the validity or fairness of the admission process. The correct approach involves a systematic review of the examination process to identify bottlenecks and inefficiencies without altering the core assessment criteria or compromising the security and fairness of the examination. This aligns with the university's commitment to upholding high standards in its admissions, as likely stipulated in its internal regulations and any overarching guidelines for higher education institutions in its jurisdiction. The focus should be on streamlining administrative tasks, improving logistical coordination, or enhancing the clarity of instructions, rather than changing the nature of the questions or the evaluation methods themselves. This ensures that the entrance exam remains a reliable measure of a candidate's suitability for the university's programs. An incorrect approach that focuses on reducing the number of questions to speed up grading would be professionally unacceptable. This directly impacts the scope and depth of the assessment, potentially leading to an inaccurate evaluation of candidates' knowledge and abilities. Such a change could violate principles of fair assessment and may contravene university policies designed to ensure comprehensive evaluation. Another incorrect approach, such as outsourcing the question paper creation to external parties without stringent oversight and adherence to the university's established curriculum and examination standards, poses significant risks. This could compromise the security and relevance of the examination content, potentially leading to unfair advantages or disadvantages for candidates and undermining the credibility of the entrance exam. It would likely violate internal quality control measures and ethical guidelines for maintaining academic standards. A third incorrect approach, which involves prioritizing speed of administration over the thoroughness of candidate verification, is also professionally unsound. Inadequate verification processes can lead to admission of unqualified candidates or breaches of security, which are serious ethical and regulatory failures. The university has a responsibility to ensure that all admitted students meet the required standards and that the integrity of the admissions process is maintained. The professional decision-making process in such situations should involve a thorough understanding of the university's mission, its entrance examination policies, and any relevant ethical codes governing academic admissions. It requires a systematic analysis of proposed changes, evaluating their impact on fairness, validity, and security. Stakeholder consultation, including academic staff and admissions officers, is crucial to ensure that any proposed optimizations are both effective and ethically sound, adhering strictly to the established regulatory framework of Madinah International University. Question 7. The efficiency study reveals that a recently implemented admissions processing system designed to streamline applications has inadvertently created significant delays, impacting the timely review of prospective student applications. The university's admissions policy emphasizes fairness and prompt communication with applicants. Which of the following represents the most professionally sound approach to address this operational challenge? Option A. Immediately revert to the previous, less efficient admissions system to avoid further delays and potential applicant dissatisfaction. Option B. Implement a mandatory overtime schedule for the existing admissions team to clear the backlog, assuming the new system is functioning as intended. Option C. Conduct a detailed root cause analysis of the admissions process involving admissions staff to identify specific points of failure within the new system and develop targeted improvements aligned with university policies. Option D. Allocate additional temporary staff to the admissions department to manually expedite the processing of delayed applications without investigating the system's performance. The correct answer is C. Conduct a detailed root cause analysis of the admissions process involving admissions staff to identify specific points of failure within the new system and develop targeted improvements aligned with university policies. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a professional challenge where a newly implemented process intended to enhance efficiency has inadvertently created a bottleneck that could negatively impact student admissions and overall university operations. The challenge lies in balancing the desire for operational improvement with the imperative to maintain service quality and adhere to university policies and ethical standards, particularly concerning fairness and transparency in admissions. Careful judgment is required to identify the root cause of the inefficiency and implement a solution that is both effective and compliant. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a thorough review of the admissions process, focusing on identifying the specific points of delay and their underlying causes. This includes consulting with the admissions team to understand their workflow challenges and the impact of the new system. The goal is to pinpoint whether the inefficiency stems from the system's design, user training, resource allocation, or an unforeseen interaction with other university processes. Once the root cause is identified, a targeted solution can be developed, which might involve system adjustments, additional training, or process reengineering, all while ensuring compliance with Madinah International University's established admission policies and ethical guidelines for student recruitment and processing. This approach prioritizes a data-driven, collaborative, and policy-aligned resolution. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach would be to immediately revert to the old system without a comprehensive analysis. This fails to address the potential benefits of process optimization and ignores the investment already made. Ethically, it might be seen as a failure to adapt and improve, and from a policy perspective, it bypasses the structured evaluation required for system changes. Another incorrect approach would be to implement a quick fix, such as simply adding more staff to the admissions department without understanding the bottleneck. This is a costly and potentially ineffective solution that does not address the systemic issue. It could lead to increased operational costs without resolving the core inefficiency, potentially violating principles of responsible resource management and efficient university operations as outlined in university guidelines. A third incorrect approach would be to blame the admissions staff for not adapting to the new system without investigating the system's usability or the adequacy of training. This is an unfair assessment that can damage morale and overlooks potential flaws in the implementation process. It violates ethical principles of fair evaluation and could contravene university policies on staff support and development. Professional reasoning. Professionals facing such a situation should adopt a structured problem-solving framework. This involves 1. Defining the problem clearly. The efficiency study has identified a bottleneck. 2. Gathering information. Consult with affected staff, review process data, and understand the new system's functionality. 3. Analyzing the root cause. Use diagnostic tools and collaborative discussions to pinpoint the source of the inefficiency. 4. Developing solutions. Brainstorm and evaluate potential remedies, considering their impact, feasibility, and alignment with university policies and ethical standards. 5. Implementing and monitoring. Execute the chosen solution and track its effectiveness, making adjustments as needed. This systematic approach ensures that decisions are informed, ethical, and aligned with the university's operational and strategic objectives. Question 8. Cost-benefit analysis shows that implementing a new automated system for initial screening of entrance exam applications could significantly reduce administrative overhead. However, this system relies on algorithms that may not fully capture the nuances of diverse applicant backgrounds, potentially leading to a higher rate of rejection for candidates from less familiar educational systems. Which approach best aligns with the Madinah International University's commitment to fair and equitable admissions? Option A. Implement the automated system, but immediately increase the number of staff dedicated to reviewing appeals to mitigate any perceived unfairness. Option B. Conduct a pilot study of the automated system with a small, representative sample of applications, alongside the traditional manual review, to compare outcomes and identify potential biases before full implementation. Option C. Reject the automated system outright, as any potential for bias, however small, is unacceptable and the current manual process, despite its cost, guarantees fairness. Option D. Proceed with the automated system, as the cost savings are substantial and the university can address any appeals from rejected candidates on a case-by-case basis. Correct answer is D. Proceed with the automated system, as the cost savings are substantial, and the university can address any appeals from rejected candidates on a case-by-case basis. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires balancing the perceived efficiency gains of a new process with the ethical and regulatory obligations of the university. The Madinah International University entrance exam framework emphasizes integrity, fairness, and adherence to established academic standards. Introducing a process that could inadvertently compromise these principles, even if seemingly cost-effective, necessitates careful consideration of its broader implications beyond mere financial savings. The correct approach involves a thorough review of the proposed process against the Madinah International University's established examination regulations and ethical guidelines. This includes assessing potential impacts on the security and validity of the entrance exam, ensuring equitable treatment of all applicants, and maintaining the reputation of the university. The justification for this approach lies in the paramount importance of upholding academic integrity and fairness, which are core tenets of any reputable educational institution. Any process change must demonstrably support, or at least not undermine, these fundamental principles. An incorrect approach that prioritizes cost savings without adequate consideration of the examination's integrity would be ethically and regulatorily unsound. This could manifest as overlooking potential vulnerabilities in the new process that might lead to unfair advantages or disadvantages for candidates, thereby violating the principle of equal opportunity. Another incorrect approach might be to implement the change without consulting relevant academic committees or reviewing existing examination policies, which would be a procedural and regulatory failure. Such actions disregard the established governance structures and the collective responsibility for maintaining the quality and fairness of the entrance examination. Professionals tasked with evaluating such process changes should adopt a decision-making framework that begins with identifying the core objectives of the entrance examination, e.g., selecting qualified candidates fairly. This should be followed by a comprehensive risk assessment of any proposed changes, considering both operational and ethical dimensions. Consultation with relevant stakeholders, including academic staff and administrative bodies responsible for examinations, is crucial. Finally, any decision must be grounded in adherence to the Madinah International University's specific regulatory framework and ethical code, ensuring that efficiency gains do not come at the expense of fairness and academic integrity. Question 9. Benchmark analysis indicates that the current Madinah International University entrance examination process is experiencing significant delays in candidate registration and result dissemination, impacting the overall efficiency of admissions. Which of the following approaches best addresses this challenge while upholding the university's commitment to fairness and academic integrity? Option A. Immediately increase the number of examination centers in urban areas to expedite the examination process for a larger pool of applicants. Option B. Implement a simplified, automated scoring system that prioritizes speed over detailed qualitative assessment of all examination components. Option C. Reduce the duration of the examination to shorten the overall testing period and speed up the grading process. Option D. Conduct a comprehensive review of the entire examination lifecycle, from application submission to result release, to identify specific process bottlenecks and areas for improvement, involving feedback from admissions staff and applicants. The correct answer is D. Conduct a comprehensive review of the entire examination lifecycle, from application submission to result release, to identify specific process bottlenecks and areas for improvement, involving feedback from admissions staff and applicants. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent tension between the university's desire for efficient resource allocation and the ethical imperative to ensure fair and equitable access to educational opportunities. The entrance examination process is a critical gatekeeper, and any perceived or actual bias can undermine the integrity of the admissions process and the university's reputation. Careful judgment is required to balance operational efficiency with fairness and adherence to Madinah International University's established admission guidelines and ethical principles. The correct approach involves a systematic review of the examination process, focusing on identifying bottlenecks and inefficiencies that could disproportionately affect certain applicant groups or lead to delays in processing applications. This approach prioritizes a thorough understanding of the current workflow, data collection on performance metrics, and consultation with relevant stakeholders to pinpoint areas for improvement. The justification for this approach lies in its commitment to fairness and transparency. By seeking to optimize processes, the university aims to ensure that all applicants are evaluated under consistent and efficient conditions, thereby upholding the principle of equal opportunity. This aligns with the university's likely commitment to academic integrity and its responsibility to provide a transparent admissions process, as would be expected of any reputable educational institution. An incorrect approach would be to implement changes based on anecdotal evidence or without a structured analysis. For instance, immediately reducing the number of examination centers without understanding the impact on applicants from remote areas or those with transportation challenges would be ethically questionable. This could lead to discriminatory outcomes, violating the principle of equal access. Another incorrect approach would be to prioritize speed of processing over the thoroughness of evaluation, potentially leading to errors or overlooking qualified candidates. This would undermine the academic rigor of the admissions process and could result in unfair rejections, damaging the university's credibility. A further incorrect approach would be to focus solely on cost-cutting measures, without considering the impact on the applicant experience or the quality of the examination administration. This could lead to a degraded examination experience, potentially disadvantaging some applicants and failing to uphold the university's commitment to providing a high-quality assessment. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that begins with clearly defining the problem and its potential impacts. This involves gathering data, consulting relevant policies and ethical guidelines of Madinah International University, and considering the perspectives of all stakeholders. Solutions should then be developed collaboratively, with a focus on fairness, transparency, and adherence to established procedures. Pilot testing of proposed changes and continuous monitoring of their effectiveness are crucial steps to ensure that optimization efforts do not inadvertently create new inequities or compromise the integrity of the admissions process. Question 10. System analysis indicates that an admissions officer at Madinah International University has received an application from a candidate whose family has a significant philanthropic relationship with the university. While the candidate meets the minimum academic requirements, their overall profile is not as strong as many other applicants. The admissions officer is aware that the university leadership would be pleased to see this candidate admitted due to the potential for continued donor engagement. Which approach best upholds the university's commitment to fair and transparent admissions while navigating this sensitive situation? Option A. Prioritize the candidate's admission due to the family's philanthropic relationship, ensuring their application is fast-tracked and favorably considered to maintain positive donor relations. Option B. Suggest that the candidate reapply in a future admission cycle, citing that, while they meet minimum requirements, their profile is not competitive enough for the current cycle, without mentioning the family's connection. Option C. Objectively evaluate the candidate's application against all published admission criteria and compare their profile holistically with other applicants, making a recommendation solely based on their qualifications and the university's admission standards, irrespective of external factors. Option D. Recommend the candidate for admission based on their academic merit, while also noting the family's philanthropic contributions in a separate, confidential memo to the university leadership, emphasizing the strategic benefit. The correct answer is D. Recommend the candidate for admission based on their academic merit, while also noting the family's philanthropic contributions in a separate, confidential memo to the university leadership, emphasizing the strategic benefit. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge related to the ethical and regulatory considerations of student admissions at Madinah International University. The challenge lies in balancing the university's commitment to academic integrity and fair admissions practices with the potential for external influence or pressure. Careful judgment is required to ensure that all decisions are made in accordance with the university's established policies and the relevant regulatory framework governing higher education institutions in its jurisdiction. The correct approach involves a thorough and objective review of all applications, adhering strictly to the published admission criteria and processes. This ensures fairness and transparency, upholding the university's reputation and complying with any applicable regulations that mandate equitable treatment of all applicants. The university's internal policies, which are designed to align with the broader regulatory environment for higher education, would typically emphasize merit-based selection and the avoidance of undue influence. An incorrect approach would be to deviate from established procedures based on personal connections or perceived external pressure. This could lead to a violation of the university's admission policies, potentially breaching ethical standards of fairness and impartiality. Such actions could also contravene regulatory guidelines that aim to prevent favoritism and ensure that admissions are based on objective criteria, thereby undermining the integrity of the academic institution. Another incorrect approach would be to bypass the standard review process for certain applicants, even if the intention is to expedite their admission. This circumvention of established protocols can create an appearance of impropriety and may violate regulations that require all applications to undergo the same rigorous evaluation. It also fails to provide a consistent and defensible basis for admission decisions. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a clear understanding of the university's admission policies and the relevant regulatory framework. When faced with a situation that might compromise these standards, a professional should 1. Consult the official admission guidelines and policies. 2. Seek clarification from the relevant university department or committee responsible for admissions. 3. Document all interactions and decisions meticulously. 4. Prioritize adherence to established procedures and ethical principles over external pressures or personal biases. 5. If necessary, escalate concerns to higher authorities within the university to ensure compliance and maintain institutional integrity. Question 11. The efficiency study reveals that the current manual process for reviewing applicant portfolios for the Madinah International University entrance exam is time-consuming and prone to minor inconsistencies. To streamline this, several proposals have been put forward to optimize the process. Which of the following approaches best aligns with the university's commitment to academic integrity and applicant data protection under its regulatory framework? Option A. Immediately adopting a new AI-powered automated scoring system for portfolio review, as it promises significant speed improvements and cost savings, without conducting a thorough internal review of its potential biases or data handling capabilities. Option B. Outsourcing the entire portfolio review process to a third-party vendor that offers a proprietary, highly efficient system, without conducting due diligence on the vendor's data security protocols or ensuring alignment with the university's ethical guidelines. Option C. Focusing solely on reducing the number of reviewers involved in the process to cut down on personnel costs, even if this leads to an increased workload per reviewer and a higher risk of overlooking critical application details. Option D. Implementing a phased approach that involves detailed mapping of the current portfolio review workflow, identifying specific pain points, gathering feedback from admissions staff, and proposing targeted improvements that are then vetted for compliance with university data privacy policies and academic fairness standards before implementation. The correct answer is D. Implementing a phased approach that involves detailed mapping of the current portfolio review workflow, identifying specific pain points, gathering feedback from admissions staff, and proposing targeted improvements that are then vetted for compliance with university data privacy policies and academic fairness standards before implementation. Explanation. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing the university's operational needs with the ethical and regulatory obligations concerning student data privacy and academic integrity. The Madinah International University entrance exam framework mandates strict adherence to data protection principles and fair assessment practices. The correct approach involves a systematic review of existing processes to identify bottlenecks and inefficiencies without compromising the integrity of the entrance examination or violating student privacy regulations. This approach prioritizes a thorough understanding of the current workflow, stakeholder input, and alignment with university policies and any applicable Sharia-compliant principles governing data handling and fairness in education. It ensures that any proposed changes are both effective and ethically sound, respecting the confidentiality and rights of applicants. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on rapid technological implementation without adequate process mapping and risk assessment fails to consider the potential for unintended consequences, such as data breaches or the introduction of bias into the assessment. This disregards the regulatory requirement for due diligence and responsible technology adoption. Another incorrect approach that bypasses established university approval channels and consults only external vendors, without internal ethical review or consideration of Madinah International University's specific policies, risks non-compliance with internal governance and potentially external data protection laws. This demonstrates a lack of professional accountability and adherence to institutional procedures. Finally, an approach that prioritizes cost reduction above all else, potentially leading to the adoption of less secure or less equitable systems, is ethically and regulatorily unsound. It fails to uphold the university's commitment to providing a fair and secure examination process for all applicants, which is a fundamental ethical and potentially regulatory expectation. Professionals should adopt a decision-making framework that begins with a clear understanding of the problem and objectives, followed by a comprehensive analysis of existing processes, identification of potential solutions, rigorous risk assessment, including ethical and regulatory compliance, stakeholder consultation, and a phased implementation plan with continuous monitoring and evaluation. This ensures that improvements are sustainable, ethical, and compliant. Question 12. The control framework reveals inconsistencies in the submitted entrance examination scores for a cohort of prospective students, with several scores appearing unusually high or deviating significantly from expected performance patterns based on their application profiles. The admissions committee is under pressure to meet enrollment targets for the upcoming academic year. Which of the following approaches best upholds the Madinah International University's entrance examination regulations and ethical admission standards? Option A. Reject all applications from students with flagged discrepancies to avoid any potential issues, regardless of the nature of the inconsistencies. Option B. Proceed with admitting the students based on the submitted scores, assuming minor data entry errors, to ensure enrollment targets are met. Option C. Inform the prospective students about the discrepancies and allow them to resubmit their examination results without further scrutiny to expedite the admission process. Option D. Initiate a thorough review of the flagged examination results, cross-referencing with original submission documents, and potentially requesting further verification from the examination body, prioritizing academic integrity over immediate enrollment figures. Correct answer is B. Proceed with admitting the students based on the submitted scores, assuming minor data entry errors, to ensure enrollment targets are met. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent tension between the university's stated commitment to academic integrity and the practical pressures of student recruitment and retention. The admissions committee must navigate these competing interests while adhering strictly to the Madinah International University's entrance examination regulations and guidelines. A key ethical consideration is ensuring fairness and transparency in the admissions process, preventing any undue influence or bias that could compromise the integrity of the examination. The correct approach involves a meticulous review of all submitted documentation, including the entrance examination results, and a thorough investigation into any discrepancies or potential irregularities. This aligns with the Madinah International University's regulatory framework, which emphasizes a merit-based selection process and the importance of upholding academic standards. The university's guidelines likely mandate a rigorous verification process to ensure that all admitted students meet the required academic benchmarks and have achieved their results through legitimate means. This approach prioritizes the integrity of the student body and the reputation of the university. An incorrect approach would be to overlook the flagged discrepancies due to pressure to meet enrollment targets. This would violate the university's regulations by failing to conduct a proper assessment of applicant qualifications and could lead to the admission of unqualified students, thereby undermining academic standards. Another incorrect approach would be to dismiss the flagged discrepancies without further investigation, assuming they are minor errors. This demonstrates a lack of due diligence and a failure to uphold the principles of fairness and transparency mandated by the university's examination and admissions policies. Such an action could also expose the university to reputational damage and potential challenges to its admissions process. Professionals in this situation should employ a systematic decision-making process. This involves first identifying the core issue, discrepancies in examination results, then consulting the relevant university regulations and guidelines, Madinah International University Entrance Exam Framework. Next, they should gather all necessary information and evidence to understand the nature and extent of the discrepancies. Based on this evidence and the regulatory framework, they should then formulate a course of action that upholds academic integrity and fairness, such as initiating a formal review or investigation. Finally, they must document their decision-making process and the rationale behind their actions. Question 13. The efficiency study reveals potential improvements to the Madinah International University entrance examination administration process that could significantly reduce processing time and resource allocation. However, some proposed changes might alter the candidate experience or the way certain assessment components are delivered. Which of the following represents the most professionally responsible and ethically sound approach to implementing these findings? Option A. Implement the efficiency improvements immediately as recommended by the study to realize cost savings and faster processing, assuming the primary goal is operational enhancement. Option B. Conduct a thorough review of the proposed changes, assessing their impact on examination fairness, validity, and candidate equity, and seek formal approval from the relevant university academic and administrative bodies before implementation. Option C. Delegate the decision-making for implementing efficiency improvements to the administrative staff directly involved in processing, trusting their judgment on what changes are best for operational flow. Option D. Prioritize the efficiency gains by adopting the quickest and most cost-effective solutions, with a plan to address any candidate concerns that may arise post-implementation. The correct answer is A. Implement the efficiency improvements immediately as recommended by the study to realize cost savings and faster processing, assuming the primary goal is operational enhancement. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires balancing the pursuit of operational efficiency with adherence to the ethical principles and regulatory guidelines governing academic institutions, specifically within the context of Madinah International University's entrance examination framework. The university's commitment to fairness, academic integrity, and the equitable assessment of all candidates is paramount. Introducing changes that could inadvertently create an unfair advantage or disadvantage for certain applicant groups, without thorough consideration of their impact on the integrity of the examination process, is a significant ethical and regulatory concern. The correct approach involves a systematic and consultative process that prioritizes the integrity and fairness of the entrance examination. This entails conducting a comprehensive impact assessment of any proposed efficiency improvements on the examination's validity, reliability, and fairness. Crucially, it requires seeking approval from the relevant university authorities, such as the Admissions Committee or Academic Council, and ensuring that any changes align with Madinah International University's established examination policies and any applicable higher education regulations. This consultative and approval-based method upholds the university's commitment to transparency and due process, ensuring that efficiency gains do not compromise the fundamental principles of equitable assessment. An incorrect approach would be to implement efficiency changes without proper consultation or approval. This could manifest as directly modifying examination procedures based solely on the efficiency study's recommendations, without verifying their alignment with university policy or their potential impact on fairness. Such an action would violate the ethical obligation to maintain the integrity of the admissions process and could contravene internal university regulations or broader educational standards that mandate fair and transparent assessment practices. Another incorrect approach would be to prioritize perceived efficiency over potential negative impacts on candidate experience or accessibility, such as streamlining processes in a way that disadvantages applicants with specific needs or limited access to technology without adequate mitigation strategies. This disregards the ethical imperative to provide a fair opportunity for all qualified candidates to demonstrate their abilities. Professionals in this situation should adopt a decision-making framework that begins with understanding the core objectives of the efficiency study. This involves identifying potential changes that enhance operational effectiveness while rigorously evaluating their implications for fairness, equity, and adherence to established university policies and ethical standards. The next step is to engage relevant stakeholders, including academic departments, admissions officers, and potentially student representatives, to gather feedback and assess potential impacts. Any proposed changes must then be formally presented to the appropriate decision-making body within Madinah International University for review and approval, ensuring that all actions are documented and justifiable within the university's regulatory and ethical framework. Question 14. The efficiency study reveals that a proposed streamlined process for grading final examinations could significantly reduce the turnaround time for results. However, Concerns have been raised about whether this new process adequately maintains the rigor and fairness of the evaluation. Which of the following represents the most professionally responsible course of action for Madinah International University? Option A. Immediately implement the streamlined grading process to capitalize on the efficiency gains and expedite the delivery of examination results to students. Option B. Conduct a comprehensive review of the proposed grading process by the relevant academic and administrative committees to ensure alignment with university policies on assessment, academic integrity, and student welfare before implementation. Option C. Implement the streamlined grading process with a primary focus on speed, assuming that any minor compromises in feedback detail are acceptable for the sake of efficiency. Option D. Disregard the efficiency study and continue with the existing grading process to avoid any potential disruption or controversy. The correct answer is B. Conduct a comprehensive review of the proposed grading process by the relevant academic and administrative committees to ensure alignment with university policies on assessment, academic integrity, and student welfare before implementation. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires balancing the pursuit of operational efficiency with the ethical and regulatory obligations of Madinah International University. The university, as an educational institution, has a duty to uphold academic integrity and ensure fair assessment practices. Introducing a process that could inadvertently compromise these principles, even for the sake of speed, demands careful consideration of the underlying ethical and regulatory frameworks governing higher education in its jurisdiction. The correct approach involves a thorough review of the proposed process optimization by the relevant academic and administrative committees, ensuring alignment with the university's established policies on assessment, academic integrity, and student welfare. This approach is professionally sound because it prioritizes a systematic and consultative evaluation. It ensures that any changes are not only efficient, but also ethically defensible and compliant with the university's internal regulations and any overarching educational standards applicable within its operating jurisdiction. This consultative process allows for the identification of potential unintended consequences and ensures that student rights and academic standards are not compromised in the pursuit of efficiency. An incorrect approach would be to immediately implement the optimized process without adequate review. This fails to uphold the university's responsibility to ensure fair and transparent assessment procedures. Ethically, it risks creating an environment where students perceive unfairness or where the integrity of academic outcomes is questioned. From a regulatory perspective, it could violate internal university policies designed to safeguard academic standards and student rights, potentially leading to reputational damage and formal complaints. Another incorrect approach would be to dismiss the efficiency study entirely without proper consideration. This demonstrates a lack of commitment to continuous improvement and potentially overlooks genuine opportunities to enhance university operations. Ethically, it could be seen as a failure to be good stewards of university resources and a missed opportunity to improve the student experience. From a professional standpoint, it stifles innovation and can lead to stagnation. A third incorrect approach would be to implement the optimization with a focus solely on speed, disregarding potential impacts on the quality of student feedback or the fairness of the assessment process. This prioritizes a single metric, speed, over the holistic requirements of a robust educational system. Ethically, it risks devaluing the importance of thorough and constructive feedback, which is crucial for student development. It also fails to consider the potential for bias or error amplification in a rushed process, which could lead to unfair outcomes for students. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a structured approach. First, understanding the proposed change and its intended benefits. Second, identifying potential risks and ethical considerations. Third, consulting relevant stakeholders and reviewing applicable policies and regulations. Fourth, conducting a pilot or phased implementation if necessary. And finally, evaluating the outcomes against both efficiency goals and ethical/regulatory standards. Question 15. Upon reviewing the application of a prospective student for the upcoming academic year, the admissions committee notes that while the candidate's academic scores are slightly below the stated minimum requirement for the Bachelor of Islamic Studies program, a senior faculty member with extensive experience in the field has strongly recommended them, citing exceptional potential and a unique personal background that could enrich the university community. The committee is aware of the university's commitment to academic excellence and its established admission guidelines. What is the most appropriate course of action for the admissions committee to take? Option A. Grant admission to the candidate based on the senior faculty member's recommendation, assuming their judgment reflects the university's best interests. Option B. Conduct a thorough review of the applicant's entire profile, including their personal statement, any supplementary materials, and the faculty member's detailed justification, to determine if exceptional circumstances warrant a deviation from the standard score requirement, in accordance with university policy on exceptional admissions. Option C. Inform the applicant that they do not meet the minimum score requirement and therefore cannot be considered for admission, regardless of other factors. Option D. Expedite the admission process for this candidate by creating a special admission category, acknowledging the faculty member's endorsement and the potential for future financial contributions. The correct answer is B. Conduct a thorough review of the applicant's entire profile, including their personal statement, any supplementary materials, and the faculty member's detailed justification, to determine if exceptional circumstances warrant a deviation from the standard score requirement, in accordance with university policy on exceptional admissions. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between the university's stated commitment to academic integrity and the pressure to admit a candidate who may not fully meet the established criteria. The admissions committee must navigate this delicate balance, ensuring that decisions are fair, transparent, and in line with the university's own regulations and ethical standards. The challenge lies in upholding the integrity of the admissions process while also considering individual circumstances, without compromising the overall quality and reputation of Madinah International University. The correct approach involves a thorough and objective evaluation of the applicant's profile against the established admission requirements, with a focus on identifying any mitigating factors or exceptional circumstances that might warrant special consideration. This approach prioritizes adherence to the university's published admission policies and procedures, ensuring that all candidates are assessed on a consistent and equitable basis. Specifically, it aligns with the principles of fairness and due process expected in academic admissions. The university's internal regulations, which would govern the entrance examination and admissions process, would mandate such an objective review. This ensures that decisions are defensible and uphold the academic standards of Madinah International University. An incorrect approach would be to bypass the established review process and grant admission based solely on the recommendation of a senior faculty member, without independent verification of the applicant's qualifications or a clear justification within the university's admission framework. This failure to follow due process undermines the integrity of the admission system and could lead to the admission of unqualified students, thereby diminishing the university's academic standing. Another incorrect approach would be to solely focus on the potential financial contribution of the applicant, disregarding the academic merit and suitability for the chosen program. This prioritizes financial gain over academic standards, which is ethically unsound and contrary to the core mission of a higher education institution. Finally, an approach that involves creating a new ad hoc criterion for admission specifically for this candidate, without proper consultation or approval from the relevant university bodies, would also be a failure. This demonstrates a lack of adherence to established governance and procedural fairness. Professionals in this situation should employ a decision-making framework that begins with a clear understanding of the relevant university policies and admission criteria. They should then objectively assess the applicant's qualifications against these criteria, meticulously documenting all findings. Any potential mitigating factors or exceptional circumstances should be identified and evaluated in accordance with established procedures. If there is a need for deviation from standard procedure, it must be based on a well-reasoned justification, supported by evidence, and approved by the appropriate authorities within the university. Transparency and fairness should guide every step of the process. Question 16. The efficiency study reveals that the current Madinah International University entrance examination process is time-consuming for both administrators and candidates. To address this, several proposals have been put forward to streamline the examination administration and marking, Which of the following approaches best balances the need for efficiency with the ethical and regulatory requirements of a fair and valid entrance examination? Option A. Significantly reducing the number of questions across all sections of the examination to shorten the overall testing time, assuming that a shorter test will inherently be more efficient. Option B. Introducing a new, fully automated essay grading system for all written components of the examination, with minimal human review to drastically cut down on marking time. Option C. Implementing a phased introduction of digital examination platforms for question delivery and response submission, coupled with a review of question types to ensure they are amenable to efficient and reliable automated scoring where appropriate, while maintaining human oversight for complex or subjective components. Option D. Prioritizing the speed of examination administration by allowing invigilators to make on-the-spot decisions regarding question clarification and time allocation without prior standardized guidelines. The correct answer is C. Implementing a phased introduction of digital examination platforms for question delivery and response submission, coupled with a review of question types to ensure they are amenable to efficient and reliable automated scoring where appropriate, while maintaining human oversight for complex or subjective components. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires balancing the pursuit of operational efficiency with adherence to the ethical principles and regulatory guidelines governing academic institutions, specifically those applicable to Madinah International University. The university's entrance examination process is a critical gateway, and any modifications must uphold fairness, integrity, and transparency. The challenge lies in identifying process improvements that enhance efficiency without compromising the quality or validity of the assessment, and crucially, without introducing any bias or unfair advantage. The correct approach involves a systematic and evidence-based review of the existing examination process, focusing on identifying bottlenecks and areas for streamlining without altering the core assessment objectives or introducing subjective elements. This approach prioritizes maintaining the integrity of the examination by ensuring that any proposed changes are thoroughly vetted for their impact on fairness and validity. Specifically, it aligns with the implicit ethical duty of academic institutions to provide a fair and equitable assessment process for all prospective students. Furthermore, it respects the regulatory framework that mandates the university to conduct its admissions and examinations in a manner that is transparent and free from bias. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on reducing the number of questions, without a corresponding adjustment in the assessment scope or difficulty, would fail to maintain the validity of the examination. This could lead to an inaccurate measure of a candidate's knowledge and aptitude, potentially admitting students who are not adequately prepared or unfairly excluding those who are. Such an approach would violate the ethical principle of providing a fair and accurate assessment. Another incorrect approach that involves introducing automated grading for essay-based questions without rigorous validation would also be professionally unacceptable. While aiming for efficiency, this method risks misinterpreting nuanced answers, penalizing creative or unconventional but correct responses, and failing to capture the depth of understanding that human evaluators can assess. This would contravene the ethical obligation to evaluate students comprehensively and fairly, and could also violate regulatory requirements for standardized and reliable assessment methods. A third incorrect approach that prioritizes speed of administration over the thoroughness of question design and review would be detrimental. This could lead to poorly worded questions, ambiguous instructions, or content that is not aligned with the intended learning outcomes, thereby undermining the entire purpose of the entrance examination. This would be an ethical failure in upholding the university's responsibility to conduct a meaningful and valid assessment. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a multi-stakeholder approach. This includes consulting with academic staff, admissions officers, and potentially external assessment experts. Any proposed changes should be piloted and evaluated for their impact on fairness, validity, and reliability before full implementation. The guiding principle should always be to enhance efficiency in a manner that supports, rather than compromises, the core mission of providing a high-quality and equitable educational opportunity. Question 17. The assessment process reveals a significant backlog of applications for the upcoming academic year, prompting a discussion among the admissions committee on how to expedite the review process without compromising the integrity of candidate selection. Which of the following approaches best upholds the principles of fair and thorough evaluation within the Madinah International University's admission framework? Option A. Implementing a multi-stage review process where each application is initially screened for minimum academic requirements, followed by a detailed evaluation of qualitative aspects by a dedicated subcommittee. Option B. Conducting a rapid, superficial review of all applications, focusing primarily on the highest academic scores to quickly identify top candidates. Option C. Allowing individual admissions officers to make final decisions based on their personal judgment and informal network recommendations to speed up the process. Option D. Prioritizing applications based on the perceived prestige of the applicant's previous educational institution, assuming higher standards. The correct answer is A. Implementing a multi-stage review process where each application is initially screened for minimum academic requirements, followed by a detailed evaluation of qualitative aspects by a dedicated subcommittee. Explanation: the assessment process reveals a common challenge in university admissions, balancing efficiency with fairness and thoroughness. Admissions committees must process a large volume of applications while ensuring each candidate is evaluated equitably and in accordance with the university's established criteria and ethical standards. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires careful judgment to avoid both overlooking qualified candidates due to rushed processes and unfairly disadvantaging others through overly burdensome or inconsistent procedures. The university's reputation and the integrity of its admissions process depend on a well-defined and ethically sound approach. The correct approach involves a systematic review of applications, prioritizing a comprehensive assessment of each applicant's qualifications against predefined criteria. This method ensures that all relevant aspects of an application, such as academic achievements, extracurricular involvement, personal statements, and any supplementary materials, are considered. This aligns with the ethical imperative of fairness and equal opportunity in admissions, ensuring that decisions are based on merit and suitability for the university's programs. Adherence to the Madinah International University's admission guidelines, which would typically emphasize a holistic review, is paramount. An incorrect approach that relies solely on a quick scan of academic scores fails to acknowledge the multifaceted nature of a successful student. This overlooks crucial qualitative aspects of an application and can lead to the rejection of potentially strong candidates who may excel in other areas or demonstrate significant potential. Ethically, this approach is flawed as it prioritizes a single metric over a comprehensive evaluation, potentially violating principles of fairness. Another incorrect approach, which involves prioritizing applicants based on subjective impressions or informal recommendations without a structured review process, introduces bias and inconsistency. This deviates from established admission policies and can lead to discriminatory practices, undermining the integrity of the selection process. Such an approach lacks transparency and accountability, making it difficult to justify decisions and potentially violating the university's commitment to merit-based admissions. A professional decision-making framework for similar situations should involve 1. Understanding and strictly adhering to the Madinah International University's official admission policies and guidelines. 2. Establishing clear, objective, and consistently applied evaluation criteria for all applicants. 3. Implementing a multi-stage review process that allows for thorough assessment of all application components. 4. Ensuring transparency and fairness throughout the process, with mechanisms for appeal or review if necessary. 5. Regularly training admissions staff on ethical considerations and best practices in admissions. Question 18. Examination of the data shows that the Madinah International University's admissions department is facing significant pressure to increase student enrollment numbers by 15% for the upcoming academic year to meet financial targets. The current admissions process is perceived as lengthy and resource-intensive, leading to concerns about processing capacity. Which of the following approaches best addresses this situation while upholding the integrity of the university's admission standards and adhering to professional best practices for educational institutions? Option A. Immediately reduce the minimum academic score required for admission and shorten the duration of the entrance examination to process a larger volume of applicants within the time frame. Option B. Implement a preferential admissions track for applicants who demonstrate a higher capacity to pay tuition fees, allowing them to bypass certain assessment stages. Option C. Conduct a comprehensive review of the existing admissions workflow to identify and eliminate non-value-adding steps, optimize communication channels with applicants, and explore technology solutions for streamlining document verification and initial screening, ensuring that all assessment criteria remain rigorous and applied consistently. Option D. Delegate the entire admissions assessment and selection process to an external recruitment agency without establishing clear performance indicators or oversight mechanisms. Correct answer is C. Conduct a comprehensive review of the existing admissions workflow to identify and eliminate non-value-adding steps, optimize communication channels with applicants, and explore technology solutions for streamlining document verification and initial screening, ensuring that all assessment criteria remain rigorous and applied consistently. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires balancing the university's operational efficiency with the integrity of its admissions process. The pressure to admit a higher number of students for financial reasons can create a conflict of interest, potentially compromising the fairness and academic standards of the Madinah International University. Careful judgment is required to ensure that process optimization serves the university's mission without undermining its core values or violating regulatory expectations for admissions. The correct approach involves a systematic review of the admissions process to identify bottlenecks and inefficiencies that can be addressed without compromising the quality of assessment or fairness to applicants. This might include streamlining documentation submission, improving communication channels, or optimizing the scheduling of assessments. The justification for this approach lies in its adherence to principles of good governance and operational excellence, which are implicitly expected of any educational institution. While specific Madinah International University entrance exam regulations are not provided, the general ethical and professional standards for university admissions would mandate a process that is both efficient and equitable. This approach prioritizes maintaining the integrity of the admissions criteria and ensuring that all applicants are evaluated fairly based on their qualifications. An incorrect approach would be to simply lower the admission standards or reduce the rigor of the assessment criteria to process more applications faster. This would be a direct violation of academic integrity and would likely contravene any implicit or explicit regulations governing the quality of education and student intake at Madinah International University. It prioritizes speed and volume over merit and suitability, potentially admitting underqualified students and diminishing the university's reputation. Another incorrect approach would be to implement a fast-track system for certain applicants based on criteria other than academic merit, such as financial capacity or personal connections. This would introduce bias and unfairness into the admissions process, undermining the principle of equal opportunity and potentially violating ethical guidelines for admissions. Such a system would be discriminatory and would erode trust in the university's admissions procedures. A third incorrect approach would be to outsource the entire admissions assessment to an external agency without adequate oversight or clear performance metrics. While outsourcing can sometimes improve efficiency, doing so without ensuring the agency adheres to the university's standards and ethical principles could lead to a loss of control over the admissions process and a potential compromise of its integrity. This approach risks abdicating responsibility for a critical university function and could lead to inconsistent or biased evaluations. Professionals should approach such situations by first understanding the core objectives of the admissions process, to identify qualified candidates who will succeed at the university. They should then analyze the current process to identify areas for improvement that align with these objectives and any relevant institutional policies or external regulations. This involves a data-driven approach to identify inefficiencies, followed by the development and implementation of solutions that enhance efficiency without compromising fairness, academic rigor, or ethical standards. Continuous monitoring and evaluation are crucial to ensure that optimized processes remain effective and compliant. Question 19. Assessment of the most effective and ethically sound strategy for improving the efficiency of the Madinah International University's admissions process, given the need to maintain rigorous evaluation standards and meet enrollment targets. Option A. prioritizing applications from specific regions or academic backgrounds to accelerate the processing timeline. Option B, implementing a phased review system where initial applications are quickly screened for basic eligibility, followed by a more in-depth review for shortlisted candidates, while ensuring all documentation is verified before final decisions. Option C, expediting the review of applications by reducing the number of required supporting documents for all applicants. Option D, significantly increasing the number of admissions officers to handle the application volume, without a detailed analysis of current workflow. The correct answer is B, implementing a phased review system where initial applications are quickly screened for basic eligibility, followed by a more in-depth review for shortlisted candidates, while ensuring all documentation is verified before final decisions. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge in balancing the university's commitment to academic integrity with the practicalities of managing a large volume of applications. The pressure to meet enrollment targets can create an environment where shortcuts in the admissions process might be considered, but this directly conflicts with the core principles of fair and transparent evaluation. The university's reputation and the trust placed in its admissions process are at stake. The correct approach involves a systematic review of the admissions process to identify bottlenecks and inefficiencies, without compromising the thoroughness of applicant evaluation. This requires a data-driven understanding of where delays occur and implementing targeted solutions, such as optimizing the use of technology for initial screening or reallocating resources for document verification. This aligns with the Madinah International University's stated commitment to fairness and meritocracy in admissions, ensuring that all applicants are assessed based on their qualifications and potential, as per the university's internal guidelines and ethical standards for academic institutions. An incorrect approach that prioritizes speed over thoroughness would fail to uphold the university's commitment to a fair admissions process. This could lead to overlooking crucial information about applicants, potentially admitting individuals who are not academically suited or who may have misrepresented their qualifications, thereby undermining the academic standards of the university. Another incorrect approach, focusing solely on increasing the number of admission staff without analyzing the existing process, is inefficient. It addresses a symptom, workload, rather than the root cause process inefficiencies. This approach wastes resources and does not guarantee an improvement in the quality or fairness of the admissions decisions. A third incorrect approach, which involves relaxing the criteria for certain applicant groups to expedite processing, is ethically unsound and discriminatory. It violates the principle of equal opportunity and can lead to a perception of bias, damaging the university's reputation and potentially leading to legal challenges if such practices are found to contravene any established university policies or general principles of fairness. Professionals should approach such situations by first conducting a comprehensive audit of the current admissions process. This audit should identify specific areas of delay and inefficiency. Based on the findings, a strategic plan should be developed that incorporates process improvements, technological enhancements, and targeted resource allocation. Continuous monitoring and feedback mechanisms are essential to ensure the effectiveness of implemented changes and to maintain the integrity and fairness of the admissions process. Question 20. Which approach would be most effective in optimizing the Madinah International University entrance examination admission process while adhering strictly to the university's internal regulations and ethical guidelines for admissions? Option A. Relying on informal feedback from admissions staff to make immediate, ad hoc changes to the application submission and review stages. Option B. Implementing the most advanced and widely adopted admission software available, regardless of its compatibility with existing university systems or staff training needs. Option C. Significantly reducing the number of personnel involved in processing applications to lower operational costs, even if it leads to longer processing times. Option D. Conducting a comprehensive review of current admission workflows, identifying key performance indicators, and implementing data-informed adjustments with targeted technological integration. The correct answer is D. Conducting a comprehensive review of current admission workflows, identifying key performance indicators, and implementing data-informed adjustments with targeted technological integration. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent tension between the university's need for efficient resource allocation and the ethical imperative to ensure fair and transparent admissions processes, particularly in the context of an entrance examination. The university must balance operational effectiveness with its commitment to academic integrity and equitable opportunity for all applicants. Careful judgment is required to select an approach that optimizes processes without compromising these fundamental principles. The correct approach involves a systematic review of existing admission procedures to identify bottlenecks and inefficiencies, followed by the implementation of data-driven improvements and the integration of technology where appropriate, all while ensuring compliance with Madinah International University's established admission regulations and ethical guidelines. This approach is professionally sound because it directly addresses process optimization by seeking to enhance efficiency and effectiveness. It aligns with the university's responsibility to manage its resources prudently and to provide a streamlined experience for applicants. Furthermore, by focusing on data and technology, it promotes transparency and reduces the potential for human error or bias, thereby upholding ethical standards in admissions. The university's internal policies and any relevant guidelines from accrediting bodies would mandate such a structured and evidence-based approach to process improvement. An incorrect approach would be to implement changes based solely on anecdotal feedback without a thorough analysis of the current process. This fails to address the root causes of any inefficiencies and could lead to superficial or ineffective solutions, potentially creating new problems or exacerbating existing ones. Ethically, it risks undermining the fairness of the admissions process by not ensuring that improvements are equitable and universally beneficial. Another incorrect approach would be to prioritize cost-cutting measures above all else when redesigning processes, such as drastically reducing staffing for admissions processing or eliminating essential applicant support services. While cost efficiency is important, it must not come at the expense of operational integrity or the applicant experience. This approach could violate ethical obligations to provide a reasonable level of service and could lead to procedural errors or delays that disadvantage applicants, contravening the spirit of fair admissions. A third incorrect approach would be to adopt a one-size-fits-all technological solution without considering the specific needs and context of Madinah International University's admissions. This might involve implementing a complex, expensive system that is not well suited to the university's current infrastructure or the skills of its staff, leading to implementation challenges and potentially hindering rather than helping the optimization process. It also risks creating a less accessible or more impersonal experience for applicants, which could be ethically problematic if it disproportionately affects certain groups. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a clear understanding of the objectives, process optimization, a thorough assessment of the current state, the identification of potential solutions, an evaluation of these solutions against established university regulations and ethical principles, and a phased implementation with continuous monitoring and feedback. This iterative and principled approach ensures that improvements are both effective and ethically sound.